I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Siew Ting Foo.
This is where the art comes in terms of brand management and brand stewardship or brand leadership. There are aspects of the brand which I firmly believe that you can't lose control in, and the mental availability and it is really created through distinctive brand assets.
Siew Ting Foo is a transformational growth leader who builds businesses and brands with soul. She has spent most of her 25-year career focused on this mission by infusing human-centric growth strategies into brands including Unilever, Mars Inc., Diageo, Fonterra, and most recently, HP Inc. As a female leader who has worked in global business and marketing roles, Siew Ting shares her experiences in her new book, Building Brands with Soul. From creating value for shareholders, humanizing growth strategies for global brands, or leading groundbreaking initiatives that set industry benchmarks. The book is her continuous commitment to inspire and nurture the next generation of marketing leaders. My interview with Siew Ting Foo is coming right up. But first...
This episode is brought to you by Vuori. Give the active people in your life something they'll truly appreciate. Performance apparel from Vuori. Whether they're into running, surfing, hiking, or even just casual walks around the block, there's something for everyone. And if you're not sure what to gift them, you can't go wrong with something from Vuori's Dream Knit collection. It's the perfect gift and so comfortable. Get 20% off your first purchase today at Vuori. VUORI.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
Siew Ting Foo, welcome to On Brand.
Hi, Nick. Hi, everyone.
So I am excited to chat with you about this concept of building a brand with a soul. But I feel like sometimes branding can be hard enough to get our arms around as a definition. What does it mean for a brand to have a soul?
Yeah, I think first of all, give a little background myself. I had fantastic opportunities over my 2 decades of career in marketing, working on iconic brands like many of them that we know, like Johnny Walker, Guinness, Skittles, Starburst, Mars, and many of them stand on the shoulders of great founders and giants, and each and every one of them actually have a soul. And what does it mean by having a brand on soul? For me, it's really come down to 5 criteria that I define them in my own way and also articulated in the book. A brand with soul needs to start from a fantastic purpose, and the purpose needs to, number 2, stay relevant and keep reinventing with times. And then the third thing is a brand with soul needs to connect with people on an emotional level, and it has to have an impact on people's lives. And number 4, a great brand with soul is very, very consistent, and it has amazing, what we call in marketing, distinctive brand assets that you could actually recognize. So everywhere you go, you could, feel it, smell it, taste it, see it in a very consistent way. And last but not least, but very, very important, the brand with soul is actually starts from within the organization. It's an amalgamation of the people's, the employees' passion, and also their stories and the love of the brand. So that for me is my own definition of brand with soul.
So I like how your last kind of criteria in there is about starting internally. And I wondered, that can sound almost deceptively simple. So, what is the work involved in understanding that internal meaning, especially
Mhm.
for some of the large, complex organizations
Mhm.
that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, Nick, you rightly said that, it sounds deceptively easy, but actually, on the contrary, it's actually very, very complex. Especially in the current world that we live in, branding and marketing is no longer just defined by, hey, I do a great marketing campaign, or I satisfy the marketing customers or the customers, and you're done. No, in fact, the role of branding and building a brand, it's getting very complex. You have to serve multi stakeholders, so from the customers to the employees, to your shareholders, and even externally, towards the communities and that you serve, and also even some of the influencers and governance stakeholders, depending on what kind of category you get involved in. So I don't think it's actually simple. In fact, it's pretty complex. I guess the magic really lies with the leader or the leadership of the people steering the ship. How you really start with having the grit and having the purpose yourself to to really drive a passion and a vision for the brand. And you start in my book I talk a little bit about this effect of a ripple effect, like water ripple. You start with yourself, then you start with influencing through the communities and the teams that you build and the stakeholders, and then with that, then you can really impact, the organization largely and create buy-in. And once you do that, you're actually is a great testament of, getting the internal buy-in and the employees and their own stories to tell. Then you can actually start go outside and actually creating the right impact externally.
I love that idea of ripple effects too, because I think that that's a great metaphor for the kind of combination of art and science of
Mm,
how brands move today is really in those ripples. But just like creating a ripple in water, you have to create something that has an impact to be able to travel like that
mhm,
as well. You talked in your kind of fourth criteria there, if I'm recalling correctly,
mm,
about all of the different ways that brands consistently engage
mm,
throughout their various touch points. And I wondered if, with all of the noise in the marketplace today, how we find distinctive ways to stand out as brands.
well, I think this is where the art comes in terms of brand management and brand stewardship or brand leadership. There are aspects of the brand which I firmly believe that you can't um, lose control in, which is, I mean, if you look at all the great marketing books and, the great people like, Mark Richland and also Byron Sharp, talks a lot about, creating the mental availability, and the mental availability and, it is really created through distinctive brand assets. What is the memory structure that you need to create in the consumer's mind, and to bring a great example of a brand to life, which is a brand that I used to work with a couple of years ago with Diageo, which is the Johnny Walker brand. There are four distinctive assets that they always kept consistent. I mean, number one, it's really, it's keep walking tagline. Everywhere you go, is keep walking. And it doesn't change for many, many years, in fact, for decades. Then they have the iconic striding man, which is a form of recognition of, people's progress. And then you have the black and the gold color, which consistently stay with the brand. And last but not least, it's bold and strong and peaty, good quality whiskey, which is what Johnny Walker taste is really all about. So these four things, it doesn't change. It stays very, very consistent, whether you're in different parts of the world. And I think that's really important to create the memory structure in consumers' mind in order to really cut through the noise that we are in now. Yeah.
Well, focus group of one here. We had a special occasion a few years back, and got a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue,
Hmm.
and we kept the box, and it is still kind of sitting up on display out in our garage, and I see it every time I pull my car back in. And I think about that in terms of your criteria, and I think it's an example of a brand that means something. So,
Yeah.
so many other, we would view boxes packaging as disposable, but like to your last point, it's a memory of that experience, and the brand was at the heart of that experience.
Yeah. Absolutely.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
Hey, it's me, the Quenchies. I'm that late afternoon craving you just can't shake. Wait, what's that? Welch's Grape Aid? No! Made with real fruit and no added sugar, nothing answers the call of the Quenchies like Grape Aid. Got the Quenchies? Grab a Grape Aid in your juice aisle.
Way to eat a tea. You're listening to an ad for PC Game Pass. Want new games on day one like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? How about living out your Sims life with EA Play? We're talking high-quality PC games all for one low monthly price. We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle available December 9th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. Okay, that's the ad. You can go back to doing whatever you were doing now.
Now, back to the show. So, I want to talk a little bit more about your idea of infusing human-centric growth strategies into brands. And I feel like I'm making you define everything here this week on the show. But when we talk about human-centric, it's another one that could feel deceptively simple. But
Yeah.
how do we make sure we're keeping the people at the center of what we're doing today, especially
Yeah.
and in some ways we are ending up more separated from that with tools like AI.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, a little bit of background. I spent the last 10 years transforming organizations. I happen to be put into roles whereby my mandate is about, hey, reframing, the seat that I have on the table for marketing, but in the process, reframe the brand, the team, the organization, and the culture. So through these experiences, I learned one very consistent thing, which is, bring the people along. Having the people at the center of the transformation journey is actually very, very critical for me, in order to make sure that the transformation job to be done is done successfully. So through this, past many years of transforming organization, and in the book, I actually articulate my own experiences. I don't think they are perfect. I'm still learning. But it actually summarizes my own version of humanizing growth. And it's, if you get a copy of the book, Nick, it's actually, on the front cover of my book, which is summarized up in the ripple effect. And my own way of, my recommended way of human-centric growth, it has to start with, the four ripples. And it start with the leader himself on a self-mastery. Not going too much into cliche, but it really goes back to, hey, you need to know your purpose. You need to know what is your ikigai, which is a purpose word in Japanese. You need to know what are your derailers. You need to be very self-aware. You need to consistently stay curious, keep reinventing yourself, because the marketing world changes and transcends very quickly with the role of technology. And then the second part of the strategy is really about how you lead teams. So in the book, I talk a fair bit about, hey, how do you, build a North Star and a combined goal for the team? How do you create an environment that is, trusted, and bring out the best diverse voices, and for people to perform, and also talk about my own strategy of how to putting the people right at the right bus. And then the third piece is really what I talk about in terms of the way in on building brands. So with this three part, self, team, and brands, then you can actually create an impact on the business growth at a multi-stakeholder level. So this is my own definition of human-centric growth, and also is true, having been in different organizations and different culture and different roles, and my own tried and tested experiences. Yeah.
So, this is the second time that leadership has come up in our conversation. And as we look at organizations, uh, uh, leadership is critical in
Mm,
building a brand with, as you would say, a soul.
mm.
What does, in your experience, is a leader, are leaders always tuned into the fact that they are key tools in building the brand?
It's a fantastic question. I don't think all the time leaders are tuned into the fact that they need to build brand, and the brand with soul, especially, in the current climate that we face, whereby, challenges and demand around building short term, often than not overweigh the longer term, and brand building is often seen more as, more as a little bit more about the longer term itself. So I think then the magic really lies with the leader, or in this case, the chief marketing officer, which really plays the role of, making sure that he or she elevate the role of the brand narrative, not as a marketing functions job, but really at a corporate levels job, and linking it back to the purpose, the mission, and the corporate vision and the corporate strategy, and unify and using that and the customer voice, to really create an organization narrative that is meaningful and powerful. I mean, I have been very fortunate to work for many fantastic leaders and many fantastic organizations that are really purposeful and really believe in building brands and building brands with soul. um yeah, and I tend to be a little bit more of the optimist in that perspective, that I firmly believe that profit and purpose can coexist.
That's such a great point in terms of the role of leaders, but also kind of really in a bigger sense. Almost, I was, as you were saying that, I was seeing in my head kind of almost a Venn diagram of the customer voice overlapping with the brand voice
Yeah,
and creating a narrative that stands out at a time when it's harder than ever to do just that.
yeah, absolutely.
So, at this time of year, I always like to ask smart marketers and brand builders, as we're looking at a year ahead, and I know many folks listening are planning for the year ahead. What are you hearing brand builders talk about in terms of planning and challenges in the coming year?
Yeah, I think two conversations that I think is quite prevalent. I think it's really balancing the long term and the short term, especially with the volatility that we're really facing in terms of the macro trend and environment, and how to create that balancing act while creating impact and speed at the same time and being agile around it. So that's one. Second thing is obviously generative AI, and AI has been in the in the narrative front, in technology, industry and spaces, but it's impacting everywhere, everyone in terms of how you look at organizations, how do you look at job to be done. But I think I tend to be the big believer that in the context of generative AI, you need to balance the human ingenuity and human aspect of it well. You need to lead by doing, but you need to be really, really, really clear on how do you scale this and not let technology lead the way and forget about the human side of things.
That is such a great point, especially with as much as we talk about AI, using it as a utility, scaling it accordingly. Really, some smart insights there as well. As we start to wrap up, I want to make sure that I come back to your book because, with a career as diverse as yours and all of the experiences that you've had, writing a book is a lot of work. What made you think that this was a book that needed to be written?
Well, I mean, 5 or 6 years ago or 10 years ago, I mean, when I was still an aspiring marketeer and I wanted to become a CMO, I always wish that there is actually a playbook out there that helps me, um, give me a playbook or blueprint on how to get there. But that doesn't quite exist. So that was one point. The second point was I was actually triggered by my husband. um, I mean, seriously, I mean, he planted this idea to me beginning of the year, and he said, "Hey, since you mentor so many people, you coach many people in your team, why don't you put everything of it into a book, so that more people out there, more aspiring marketing leaders, aspiring CMO out there, learn about this and really pay back." So it was really triggered by what he said, and I do have a purpose and a passion about unleashing people's potential, not only through the brands, but also, through leadership and the impact that I want to achieve. So I decided to embark on this journey and write the book.
That is great. Scaling the impact of your mentorship and leadership as well. Well, our conversation has made me smile many times, and I'm excited to ask you, Siew Ting, for a brand
Hmm.
that's made you smile recently. Because when we were talking about this beforehand, you said, "Does it have to be a good smile?" And I always, with every guest, I always qualify that and say it absolutely does not have to be. So what have you got for smiles?
Can I give you two?
Sure.
One positive and one negative. Um, I mean, let me start with the positive one. I think the positive one is a brand that and actually as a CMO that I admire also from far. Is actually a female brand or cosmetics brand. And it's also a brand that's only not quite that much in my region, but primarily more in US, which is ELF, ELF. Um, the cosmetics brand. I mean, I love the way that they utilize social media, and they had a great purpose. But and I also love the way how they actually integrate macro trends into a very clear positioning and done in a way that has speed and impact. But I think most importantly, I admire the leadership of the CMO, which is I think her name is Corey. How she galvanizes the entire leadership team into a passion and a belief on the brand, but also how she create a shortcut of how the C-suite leaders are near to the customers. I mean, the CEO goes into TikTok and actually listens to the customer and come out with the product innovation. So I think that's admirable, and it really shows in their results. I think their 8 quarters of growth results is phenomenal. So that's the positive one. Um, I think they're, I mean, recently, and in fact, actually just 30 minutes before the call, got a WhatsApp in my chat, and I think there's a brand that recently came out with an ad, Jaguar ad.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure whether that's. I mean, it was very surprising. I didn't know there's a Jaguar advertising, and I didn't quite see a car at the end. Not that but I couldn't recognize that it's a Jaguar ad. So that put me that Jaguar brand, or coming from a Jaguar brand, so that put a little bit of smile in my face. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it that they've been turning some heads lately. Siew Ting, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they can check out my LinkedIn, but also I do have a website that talks a bit about who I am, but also my recent published book, which is officially available today on Amazon. So they can actually check it out on www.soul4profit. So soul, SOUL, for profit .org. Yeah, and in terms of the book, which is just officially available now, is available in Amazon.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Siew Ting, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thank you.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkisporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.